I am Thomas Bowles, Ag Agent in Prince William County, and I am for the soil, for the future, and for the planet.
It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to another episode of For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Hische. This week is part 2 of our conversation with Ari Weinzweig. He's with the Zingerman community of businesses in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ari is a self-described lapsed anarchist. He is also an author and successful entrepreneur. He is widely followed for expressing his principles on leadership, training, and management. What does that have to do with soil health? You'll find out in this episode. Also joining us will be Mary Sketch with the Virginia Soil Health Coalition and Eric Benfelt, a specialist in community viability with Virginia Cooperative Extension. Let's go to the show. Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of For the Soil. I'm your host, Jeff Hische, and Eric and Mary, we have a very special guest with us rejoining us for a continued conversation about soil management techniques, about leadership and ethics, and how all that plays into soil health. Eric, would you reintroduce our special guest?
Yes, we're pleased to have Ari Weinzweig here as he's the CEO and co-founder of Zingerman's community of businesses based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and really been working on issues of both self-management, customer service, organizational leadership, and most recently doing a lot of reflection on cultural soil, the organizational ecosystem, and to see that there's a lot of application and parallels to the work that we're doing around For the Soil and the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. So I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Mary Sketch, to her questions for Ari.
Thanks, Eric. And Ari, thank you again for being with us. And we talked some in the last episode about your metaphors around how soil health has implications for how we work in community and with our build organizational culture. And, a lot of the work that I do is around building partnerships and community around soil health. How do we all come together and with our own sets of values and experiences and work to advance soil health together? And, and I think your metaphors for organizational culture and building healthy communities have a lot of implications for this, especially as soil health is really gaining ground as a transdisciplinary field. And a lot of partners are realizing from farm to table how important it is to work on this. So I'd just be, interested in the advice that you have in finding this common ground and working in partnership and across a lot of disciplines and across a diversity of backgrounds and experiences.
Well, thanks, Mary. These are just my perspectives, but I guess I've long since realized that we're all in this together. I don't remember who said it, y'all might know, but the commonly used statement in the organic farming world or sustainable farming world, pesticides don't stop at the fence line. So no matter what we do, even in our own families or organizations, I think it's naive and disingenuous to believe that what's happening next door, so to speak, isn't going to impact us. And I also believe that the drive to find this universal solution to fix the country or fix the community or fix the university, whatever, that people are looking for these macro giant, strokes of heroic genius that are going to solve everything, when I would suggest it's actually the other way, which is what we do on the few square feet of land or a few acres of land or in our small businesses or in our department at the university or on our farm or whatever it is. That's where the change is going to start. It's nice to look to some heroic leader, but I think it's really more what I can do in the way I treat people and the way we treat people in our own organization and spreading that out from there. So one of the key learnings that came to me from studying anarchist stuff is the belief that the means that we use must be congruent with the ends we want to achieve. It's a little bit of what Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. So if we really want to create a healthy ecosystem, then it needs to all be healthy. And it's not going to happen overnight, but So we're not farmers in the organization, but this idea of organizational ecosystem, as I said in the last episode, came to me a little bit as I was working on beliefs and starting to see beliefs as the root system, and then starting to see culture as the soil, and it goes on from there, which we could come back to, but hope as the sun, spirit of generosity as water, purpose as air. It just keeps evolving, and it's really helped me a lot in trying to get people to see organizations in a more holistic way. Most people have been trained to judge the health of their business by the financial statements, which I've come to say is a little bit like judging your personal health solely on the report you get from your physician when you go in for your annual physical. They give you the blood work, and it's not unimportant. It's clearly important, but there's more to your life than shows up on those 2 pages of numbers. And this is true for the financial statement too. So hope levels, the health of the cultural soil, these are all indicators of our organizational health, and the finance is one piece of it. But so with that context, I mean, I think it's just really important to work really hard on building the richness and health of the cultural soil. And I just happened to start rereading Ted Albrecht's book, part 4 of the Albrecht papers, and it's the metaphor works. I mean, he's talking in the essay that I've been reading about fertile soils. He's just talking about how like cows won't eat plants when the soil nutrition is low. The cows won't, they'll just pass it right by, right? And I think it's true in organizations too. When the cultural soil is rich and healthy, in the long run, the customers are going to buy those products because the energy that's being conveyed through the guest interactions, through the quality of the product is going to make a difference. And it doesn't mean people won't buy in a bad place, but in general, people are going to feel better when they're buying, in quotes, because it could be from a nonprofit, but when they're getting stuff from a healthy cultural.
That is an excellent point. And Ari, I wanted to get your take on a trend that we have seen really over our entire generation, and that is a trend of people wanting to know where their food comes from. And I wanted to get your perspective on, does that include people wanting to know that their food was produced on healthy soils?
Well, I think they're learning. I mean, I'm a city kid, so I grew up not knowing any of this stuff, and I think much of the world is probably, or at least the American world, is not dissimilar from me. There's a lot of urbanites who, it's much better now than 40 years later than when we opened Zingerman's Deli in 1982. But still, I mean, I don't understand a lot of it. So I think, yes, absolutely, people want to know more, but our job is to help them understand more, and understanding what I just referenced. I don't think it's common knowledge that a carrot is not a carrot. So people know now better than they used to, organic versus not organic, but the quality, you could have, as we know, not very healthy organic soil, and you could have much healthier, not certified organic soil. And the nutrient content, from everything I have learned, I mean, of the latter carrots, probably better. So it's people are trained to look for superficial stuff, which isn't necessarily bad, but you need to know the farmer. You need to know where it came from. You need to learn a little bit and train yourself as a consumer. And that's a little more work than most of us were raised to believe we should, in quotes, do.
Well, Ari, we really appreciate your taking the time to be with us and sharing your thoughts. And I know in talking with farmers about soil health, some farmers will also talk about the need for nurturing our souls. And I see, particularly in the organizational ecosystems that Zingerman's has developed, the idea of nurturing souls and encouraging diversity and knowing where energy is very important. So really appreciate your insights and what you've shared. Jeff, did you have one last thought?
I'd like to hear about your farming operation. I understand that in your community of businesses, there is an aspect that grows.
Well, there's 2 things that one is in and one is out. So there's a Cornman Farms that is a 1834 farmhouse. So this is going back to the early years of what became the state of Michigan. And then 1837 barn that we've restored to do events. And we do a little bit of growing there. And then my significant other, my girlfriend, has a little farm. So she's doing her own thing. But we buy her produce, and I live with her, and so I eat it every night, and you know, she's doing her stuff. So she's doing what y'all would like. She's not using any pesticides or no artificial stuff. She's growing everything from seed. So she starts propagating indoors. We're in Michigan, so in February, and then she moves out into her hoop house and into the soil like in late April, May. She grows all heirlooms. She hand waters everything, so enormous care and all the stuff that y'all are trying to promote.
Ari, I've got one more question for you, if I may. What is the most memorable book you've ever read concerning agriculture?
Well, I think there's a lot. I don't know necessarily most, but certainly a lot of stuff about permaculture. Toby Hemingway's books, which are really more for home gardeners, but the principles were the same. And that's my first exposure to permaculture. It came through a friend of mine who recommended it. And it helped me see through reading his work and Bill Mollison's stuff, how much what we were trying to do was comparable to what I learned at the time was permaculture. Certainly Wendell Berry writing is awesome. Wes Jackson, very fascinated with his work. And then through their stuff, I started to learn about, I mentioned Ted Albrecht's book, and I also Aldo Leopold and all these folks. And then also lately I've been listening to some stuff. I don't think he has a book, but a physician named Zach Bush, who's in Virginia, and he's coming at it from the medical perspective, talking about soil health and the implications on nutrition and its implications for cancer and a lot of the autoimmune stuff that we're seeing so much of now, and the impact of Roundup and the pesticides and how that correlates chronologically with the increase in some of these diseases. So I've been learning a lot from him as well.
Wonderful. Thank you for those recommendations, Ari. We'll make sure and link those in the show notes as well. And, I know we just have a couple minutes left, but, would love to hear any final thoughts you have on, I think in one of your blog posts, you talk about, both with building soil health and with building organizational cultures, it's about playing this long game, and it's kind of an ever-going process. How, we find motivation in that, especially around something like soil health.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is we could do 2 days on this easily, but so one of the many things I like about using the organizational ecosystem metaphor is that it helps people who have been raised in a business world that's used to industrial, military, and sports metaphors where instant victory can happen. But that's not real life. It's really about slow, steady, constant change, right? And so the mechanical model leads you to believe if you could just tinker enough, you could get everything running almost perfectly. But every farmer knows, like, you get this part of the land going and then something happens over here. And then, if you get this problem taken care of, it creates another problem, and that's okay. I mean, it's just learning to manage all of these different complex components. And so I think the idea of organizational culture as soil is much more real. It's constantly being impacted. It's constantly influenced. There's always parts of the soil that are doing a little better and doing a little worse. There's no one single thing. To the contrary, if you try to do only one thing, you'll ruin the soil, right? And just going with the obvious, not that regulation is everything, but the obviously regulatory minimum of 3-year transition from commercial pesticide agriculture to organic tells you what you need to know about organizational culture. You can hire a new CEO tomorrow, but nothing's going to be any different on Tuesday. So it's really a long, slow process. And in the e-news that you mentioned, and maybe we could put the link to that in the show notes or however y'all do it. But I mean, I actually listed 25 different things that you can do to help enhance the quality of your organizational culture, and they fit with the soil metaphors. So one of them is looking at better connections in the organizations. So the more, and this is true in communities too. I mean, the more people are talking to each other, and in the soil metaphor, I started to look at it like mycorrhiza. They're not, you don't see them, but it's creating a lot of health in the soil. Better energy, Eric mentioned earlier, bringing love to our interactions. a service mindset. So we're giving, not taking, right? The commercial agriculture model is how much can we extract and send to the market. The kind of soil that and farming that we're talking about and organization we're talking about is how do we create these healthy, lasting things? Like we're trying to keep Zingerman's here for another 50 years. We're not trying to sell it and flip it and go public. We want to make a positive, lasting impact on our ecosystem. Honoring emotions, self-awareness, generosity. These are all things that enhance our cultural soil metaphorically. And I think the more we make the soil rich, the better it's going to go. And as I mentioned earlier in Dr. Albrecht's essay, and he's talking about, you could see what's working because the cows go eat where the soil health is good, the cows go eat those plants. And I think you can see it in the community. And as Eric mentioned, I wrote a pamphlet called Working Through Hard Times about the pandemic. And it's been hard, but we're still going, and people come to us in part because of the cultural energy that they pick up. Certainly the quality of the product and the service are important, but they're also coming because they feel better in the same way that the animals or you and I feel better in a healthier ecosystem in nature.
And Ari, we're probably getting close to time, but you're also your metaphor for humus and humility. And
Yeah.
I think about like soil carbon or soil organic matter, and when that is burned up as a metaphor for burning up social and community capital. If you could speak to that.
Yeah, 100%, man. So I wrote a pamphlet came out a year ago, I think, on humility. And as I've been developing, or this model has been evolving, let's say this one was easy because it actually comes from the same root: humus, human, humility. It's all the same in the Bible. Adam, Adamah in Hebrew means earth. So I mean, it all comes from the same thing. And humility gets very little attention in the business world, or lately it's starting to. But from the 10,000 foot view, you can't. I mean, maybe you could tell how much topsoil's on there with some sort of mechanized camera work, but you really can't tell from far away. Just like people read an article about a company in the news, they don't know what's going on. But when you're in the space, without humility, good things don't grow. And just like in agriculture, people in hindsight, well-meaning, but without humility, kind of destroyed the ecosystems by destroying the topsoil. Now what we have a chance to do is to restore that topsoil, both your work in nature and then our work in organizations. And humility is such an important piece of doing that work.
Ari, it has been a real pleasure having you as a special guest of For the Soil, a conversation. If people wanted to learn more about this community of businesses that you manage, how could they get more information?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So my direct email is ari@zingermans.com. People are more than welcome to email me. The books that I do are at zingermanspress.com. So in the spirit of farm to table and the agricultural work that y'all do, and trying to be congruous with the ends we're trying to achieve, we actually do the book design here. We print them locally here in town, and we're off of Amazon. So just trying to be true to the principles that we talk about. And so Zingerman's Press has those. Zingtrain.com has our training and the books. And then also zingermanscommunity.com will have the e-news that Mary mentioned and other material. And then last but not least, we do ship food all over the country. Bread from our bakery and all sorts of other stuff from around the world. And zingermans.com is where people could get that.
Thank you again for being our special guest, Eric, Mary, and Ari. Thank you for being on this episode.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mary. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thank you all. And thank you, especially Ari.
Yeah, thank you, Ari and Jeff.
For the Soil, a conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org, and if you have a specific question about soil health, just contact your local extension office, your local USDA service center, or a Soil and Water Conservation District office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of the Flip Charts and Mr. Ruiz. All rights reserved. For the Soil, a Conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishii.